People often say old age brings peace, but I've learned that sometimes age only brings clarity, the kind that forces you to face truths you avoided your whole life. My name is Elena Marquez, and I'm 76 years old. I've spent my entire life here in Santa Flora, a quiet coastal town where the ocean whispers secrets if you sit still long enough. Maybe that's why I'm finally ready to share mine. I woke up early today like always. The younger ones say old folks wake up because we can't sleep. I say we rise because mornings still feel like promises. I made my strong coffee, fed my old parrot Benito, and sat on my porch facing the foggy shoreline. It was peaceful, comforting, until I opened the worn wooden box I had avoided for 5 decades. Inside that box were letters, old, yellowed, brittle, written in my mother's handwriting. Letters I never saw, never read, letters that were meant for me, but someone else decided I didn't need to know. Let me take you back, my dears, to when I was 14 and living with my father and his new wife, Rosa. We lived in a modest little house behind my father's workshop. My mother had passed away when I was 7, or at least that's what I had been told. A sudden illness, Rosa always said, her voice sweet as honey but ice cold as river stones. I grew up believing that story because I had no reason not to. Rosa cooked, cleaned, smiled when neighbors visited, and acted like the perfect homemaker. But behind those closed doors, something always felt off. She kept all of my mother's belongings locked away in an attic I wasn't allowed to enter. If I asked questions, she'd shake her head and say, let the past rest, Elena. It can't help you now. Still, at night when the house grew quiet, I swore I could hear footsteps in the attic above my room, soft, slow, as if someone was pacing. But when I'd tell my father, he'd brush it off and say, old houses make noise. And Rosa would smile in that way she did. Gentle, too gentle, while her fingers tapped nervously on the table. Years passed, and the unease grew with me. But everything shifted the day I overheard Rosa on the phone. Her voice was sharp, shaky, and she said a name I hadn't heard in years. My mother's name. She whispered, we can't let Elena know what really happened. If she finds out, and my heart dropped. My mother, gone? Or alive? Why hide anything from me? That single moment cracked open a door I didn't know existed, and once opened, it never closed again. Rehook. But what I discovered next wasn't just a lie. It was a betrayal woven deep into my family's history, a truth someone risked everything to conceal. After hearing Rosa whisper my mother's name on the phone, I walked around the house for hours with my heart thudding inside my chest. Every memory suddenly felt suspicious. Every smile, every excuse, every locked drawer. And that attic, the one place I'd never been allowed to enter, called to me like a heartbeat in the dark. I waited until midnight. My father had fallen asleep in his workshop, as he often did, buried in wood and silence. Rosa was in the bedroom with the door locked, her usual habit when she was hiding stress. The entire house felt tense, like the walls were holding their breath. I grabbed a candle and tiptoed up the stairs to the attic door. It was dusty, old, and covered in scratch marks, the kind made by furniture or fingernails. My hand shook as I turned the knob locked. My pulse raced. Why lock an attic in your own home? Why forbid only me from entering? Why hide my mother's belongings? My eyes drifted to the kitchen drawer where Rosa kept the spare keys. I tiptoed downstairs, my heart pounding louder with each creaking step. The keys jingled softly in my hand. The sound felt like a betrayal echoing through the house. When I returned upstairs, I slipped the key into the lock. My breath caught when I heard the soft click. The door opened with a long, painful groan. The smell hit me first, a mix of dust, old books, and something floral, a scent I hadn't smelled since childhood. My mother's perfume. Moonlight petals, as she used to call it. I stepped inside, and tears filled my eyes. The attic wasn't a storage space. It was a shrine. My mother's clothes hung neatly in a wardrobe, untouched by time. Her letters were stacked in a small wooden chest adorned with carvings my father used to make. Photos were pinned across the wall, photos of her holding me, smiling, laughing, loving. Everything I had been deprived of stood in that room. But there was more. In the corner of the attic, nearly hidden under a faded quilt, lay a suitcase. Old. Brown. Locked with a rusted clasp. Something about it felt heavy. Important. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside were documents, medical records, reports, letters written by my mother but never sent. One paper in particular made my breath freeze. A missing person report. Filed by my mother. For herself. My mind spun. Why would my mother file a missing person report on her own life? Was she running from something? Someone? Or had someone else forged it? I heard a loud creak behind me. I spun around. Rosa was standing in the doorway, her face pale. Her eyes wide. Her voice cold as winter. "Eleanor," as she whispered. "You shouldn't be in here." The flame of my candle flickered violently, and in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Rosa wasn't just hiding the past, she was afraid of it. Rehook. And what she said next shattered the last piece of the world I thought I knew, and revealed the first clue that my mother's disappearance wasn't an accident at all. Rosa stood in the attic doorway like a shadow that had finally stepped into the light. For the first time in my life, she didn't look like the calm, gentle woman she always pretended to be. Her hands trembled. Her lips pressed into a thin, frightened line. And her eyes, they looked as if she had seen a ghost. "Eleanor," as she whispered, her voice cracking, "you weren't supposed to find this." A sharp anger rose in my chest. My mother's things? Her letters? The truth about her? I stepped closer, the candle trembling in my hand. "Why did you hide all of this from me?" Rosa swallowed. "Because your father made me promise. He believed it was safer for you." Safer? My voice rose. By lying? By locking away her life like she never existed? Rosa flinched. Not from my words, but from the suitcase on the floor. Her eyes locked on the missing person report, and her face drained of color. "You opened it," as she whispered. "What is this?" I demanded. "Why does it say my mother filed a report about herself? What was she hiding from?" Rosa hesitated for a long moment, fighting some unseen battle inside her. Finally, she exhaled, defeated. "Your mother didn't die, Eleanor." The room spun as she disappeared. Those words hit me like a wave, heavy, cold, impossible to escape. "She wanted to leave Santa Flora," Rosa continued softly. "She wanted to take you with her. Your father, he didn't agree. They fought for months. She said the house didn't feel safe anymore. She said she was being followed, watched, threatened by who?" I whispered, my throat dry. Rosa hesitated. She never said. My heart pounded. So she left? And my father lied? You both lied? Tears suddenly filled Rosa's eyes. I didn't want to. I begged him to tell you the truth. But he insisted that knowing would break you. He loved you, Eleanor. He thought he was protecting you. But what happened to her? I asked, choking on my words. Rosa wiped her cheeks and shook her head. No one ever found her. The police closed the case after a year. Your father was destroyed. He blamed himself. He shut down emotionally. When he finally married me, he asked me to help him raise you with as little pain as possible. Pain, the word tasted bitter. Everything I knew about my childhood, my mother dying, my father's grief, the silence, was built on lies. I stared at Rosa, confusion and fury swirling inside me. So why hide all this now? Why never tell me after I grew up? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Because someone didn't want the truth coming out, even after all these years. Before I could ask who she meant, something outside the attic window moved. A shadow. Fast. Deliberate. I gasped and stepped back. Rosa's face turned white. Eleanor, she whispered. His back. Rehook. I didn't know who he was, but that night, I would learn that my mother's disappearance wasn't a closed chapter. It was a door someone had just reopened. Rosa's words echoed in my mind like a storm trapped in a small room. His back. The attic felt colder, as if the shadows themselves were listening. I stepped toward the window, but Rosa grabbed my wrist. Don't, as she whispered. If he knows you've seen the attic, he won't leave. A shiver crawled up my spine. Who is he, Rosa? Her eyes darted toward the suitcase on the floor. The answers are in there. But once you see them, nothing will be the same. My fingers trembled as I knelt beside the old case. The documents inside rattled softly, death certificates, newspaper clippings, medical papers, and dozens of letters from my mother. But at the bottom, tucked beneath a folded piece of fabric, was a photograph of a man. Tall, dark hair, sharp eyes, standing beside my mother. The date written on the back was from the year she vanished. Who is this? I asked, holding it up. Rosa hesitated. Your mother called him the visitor. She never told your father his real name. She only said he kept showing up, at the market, near the school, in the evenings outside your home. I felt my breath hitch. A stalker? Rosa nodded slowly. Your mother believed he wanted her for something. She never said what. But the day she disappeared, she told me she felt watched. She told me she wasn't safe. A cold realization struck me. And my father? He didn't know about him? He suspected, Rosa whispered. But without proof, he didn't know how to protect either of you. He begged her to let the police handle it, but she refused. She believed the visitor had connections, people in town she didn't trust. My heart sank. Everything was becoming a maze of fear and secrets. And now you're saying his back? I asked. Rosa swallowed. I saw him 2 weeks ago. In town. Standing across from the bakery, staring at our house. He's older, but I recognized those eyes. A chill slipped down my spine like ice water. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hoped I was wrong, she whispered. And because I didn't want the past to swallow you like it swallowed her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The candle flickered violently, casting huge shadows along the attic walls. Outside, the wind creaked against the old wooden frame of the house. I looked at the photograph again. The man's eyes felt cold, hollow, aware. And in the faint reflection on the glass window, I saw movement again. Not just a shadow this time. A figure. Standing on the street. facing the house. Roser, I breathed. He's still there. Roser grabbed the attic door. We have to get downstairs. Now. Before we could move, a loud knock echoed from the front door downstairs. Slow, firm, deliberate. 3 knocks. Then silence. Roser's face drained of color. That's him, she whispered. Rehook. And when I finally opened the door that night, I didn't find a stranger. I found someone whose face I knew far too well. The 3 knocks still echoed in my ribs as I crept down the stairs behind Roser. The house felt too small, too silent, like the walls themselves were bracing for what stood outside. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure whoever waited beyond the door could hear it. Roser motioned for me to stay behind her. But I stepped forward. This was my life. My past.my mother. I had spent my whole childhood in the dark. I wasn't going to hide anymore. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. I felt Roser's grip tighten on my arm. Eleanor, as she whispered, listen to me, whoever is on the other side. But I had already turned the knob. The door creaked open. A cold rush of night swept into the house, carrying the scent of ocean salt and damp earth. A tall figure stood under the dim porch light, his hands in his coat pockets, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. Then he stepped forward just enough for the light to touch his face. I gasped. It wasn't the man from the photograph. It wasn't the visitor. It was my father's older brother, Uncle Adrian. Someone I hadn't seen since I was 6 years old. His eyes, those sharp, cold eyes, were exactly the same as in the photo, because he was the man standing beside my mother. Hello, Eleanor, he said quietly, as though he had merely stopped by to borrow sugar. You've grown. My stomach twisted. Roser's voice broke behind me. Adrian, why have you come back? He smirked slightly, ignoring her and focusing on me. You found the attic, didn't you? He asked, his tone disturbingly calm. I knew you would, eventually. Curiosity runs in the family. My pulse quickened. You were the visitor, I whispered. You were following my mother. He didn't deny it. In fact, he nodded. She was planning to leave Santa Flora with you, he said, as if explaining a simple fact. She wanted to take you far away. But she didn't understand the arrangements your father and I had made for the family business, or the responsibilities that came with it. Responsibilities? My voice cracked. You terrified her. For the first time, his expression darkened. Your mother knew things she shouldn't have known. She was speaking to people she shouldn't have spoken to. I had to make sure nothing disrupted their balance. Roser stepped forward, her voice trembling. You ruined her life, Adrian. You destroyed that family. He shrugged, almost bored. Everyone made choices. Anger surged through me. Where is she? I demanded. What did you do to my mother? His answer was a quiet, chilling whisper. Some doors, he said, should remain closed. Before I could react, a pair of headlights flashed from the street, a police car pulling up. Roser grabbed my arm. I called them when you went downstairs, she whispered. Adrian stepped back into the shadows, but this time he didn't run. He simply stared at me, those cold, familiar eyes, as the officers approached and placed him in handcuffs. And in that moment, I understood something painful and clear. The past hadn't come to find me. I had walked straight into it. As the police car drove away, I looked at Rosa, tired, scared, relieved. And I realized that while I might never know the full truth of what happened to my mother, I finally knew the truth about the lies. And now, after 50 long years, I could begin to reclaim the pieces of myself that were stolen. Rehook. But even now, as an old woman telling this story, I still wonder, was Adrian the only one who knew what happened, or is someone else still holding the last piece of the truth?